here's the important thing. Number one, for our present day, we need to remember that Antastan is a wonderful way to draw our people's attention to, because it relates directly to our responsibility to take care of God's creation, of the earth. It's the ecological prayer of the church from present day perspective. Yesterday, we were looking at the Jamakir. We will continue to do that. But I want to point out something that is very, very important to know, because if we don't know what it is, we cannot correct it or address it. All our liturgical books have one big deficiency. That is, we do not have detailed rubrics. Who is going to do what, when, how? That's very important, because now we have a generation, and this has been the case for the last few generations, where people are unfamiliar, they're detached from the essence of the liturgies, to the point where everybody does everything. There is no, sometimes, distinction between a cleric, tabir, gerigos, and a deacon. Sometimes an experienced tabir does what the deacon does. Now, it's always okay for the deacon to do the tabir part, but it has to be clear in the course of the liturgy as to who is going to do what. There are a couple of problems. Not every parish has enough individuals involved in the liturgies for different people to do different functions. However, with that absence of rubrics, we are now losing some of the distinctive traditions that are associated with the celebration of the liturgies. Okay? Now, for example, the deacon reads the litanies. Karos reads them. In many, many instances now, it has become common practice just to say it. Whereas in our liturgical tradition, the deacon never just speaks. He always chants. The deacon will never come and offer the censer to the priest with the incense and say, it has to always be, today it was you. Tomorrow it's going to be somebody else. I'm talking generally, including when I was in the parish, my own deacons. The deacon has always to chant, and loud. Okay? It's not. I didn't know that either. Our services, our liturgies are not private practices. They are public services. Yes.
During Badanok Isgok Asenan, is there anywhere that people chant that?
Yeah, I've seen it chanted.
Really?
Yeah.
I think you could chant that. I was just wondering.
But one or two exceptions are different.
Yeah.
We're talking in general. Okay? In general. No. It has to always be chanted. Okay? The deacon's part. And going and coming. You come to the center, you say it, you go back. The other one comes. This visual movement and the audio difference is what gives the distinctive flavor of the liturgy. The books don't have it. The books assume that we know. Now, that's one thing. Today, in fact, I was writing a response to a clergy brother who had made a comment. That we have to distinguish also the difference between church traditions with a small t. That is, this is what you do, this is how you do it. That may vary from place to place. But we have to also be aware of the difference between local traditions and church-wide traditions. Okay? There are some traditions that are applicable to anyone, anywhere in the church. For example, we talked about yesterday, opening your arms when a prayer of asking something from God. Everybody in the congregation, the clergy included, should open their arms. When it says, "Astuzo yerger bakesu," let us kiss the ground before God. That's what it means. Not let us bow down, let us kiss the ground. Yergir bakanel, bow down. But we have lost these for a few reasons. Yergir bakanel, for example. In the old days, there were no pews. Mm-hmm. Everybody came to the church, was covered with carpet. Some individuals had their own cushions they brought together and they sat on it, they knelt on it. And some people actually had their spots. Nobody touched it. In Jerusalem, we had a few men and women who had their spot. Even when they were not there or they were late and other people came in, that spot was never occupied because everybody assumed that's their place. Okay? The important thing, however, is that there were no pews. So you had space for free movement. Now with the pews, you can kneel, but you cannot kiss the ground. Okay? So we have to be aware of that. But that is not the exact loss that I feel. Our loss is that when somebody enters the church on a feast day, they should notice something different. Like this past Sunday was Cute Hutch, Discovery of the Cross. People went into the church. Did they see anything different? No. It was the same as any other Sunday. Mm-hmm. Whereas local tradition, and this was universally observed, on the feasts of the cross, there would be a small table on the bima with a cross, a nice cross in the center of the table, decorated with flowers, and 2 candlesticks. So when somebody walked into the church and they don't know, they don't have the calendar, the church calendar, they look, oh, something is different. And eventually they will learn if on the altar there is a cross, it must be a feast of the cross. And they'll get used to that. That's one very important indication, but also it would provide the opportunity to practice what our liturgy naturally suggests. Okay? And what is that? Now, the Harz Sharagan for last Sunday, Vor Papakeli Dechman, it actually tells the story. It's a beautiful song, beautiful tune. Prensa is it's so beautiful.
It's a difficult
But
one.
the third verse says, Usti purelov changos anushahodutyun idervochen serputyan. Burning incense, sweet incense at the spot, at the holy spot, in parentheses where it was discovered. Now, in Jerusalem, that makes very much sense, right? That's where it was discovered. How many of you have been to Jerusalem? You have been to Jerusalem, okay. So when you go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, right, our Subkrikor Lusavorich Chapel, and then it goes down to the discovery of the cross. Catholic, remember, on the side?
Oh,
Red.
Yeah, the Catholic chapel.
Wait, which one was?
Krikor Lusavorich Chapel.
With the icons, the new icons on,
Oh, on top. Okay, yes.
in the mosaic.
Not on the left when you walk. On the left we have a.
No.
On the right, you go to the right when you walk.
To the right.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, then you go
You
down.
go down. Yes. Okay.
Okay, then on the right, there are other sets of steps that go down to the spot of the discovery of the cross.
Isn't that by Golgotha? Right by the rock.
Yeah, on the
Yeah.
side of the Kolkata.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
I didn't know that was that was the place for this.
that's where the place where it was discovered. Okay, anyway. But on that day, local Jerusalem tradition has it, naturally, it makes only sense, that we celebrate both Jamir Kutyun and Badarag in that chapel. And when this particular verse is being sung, we do exactly what the Sharagan says. Usti purelov chengotsen anushahodutyun.
I did it the other day for the third verse at Surkach. I did it at Surkach, but it wasn't in. It was in the Oratsuits, but it wasn't in the Donatsuits.
It's not,
So how does that happen? How does it?
because it's local tradition.
Okay.
Jerusalem. Where is the holy spot where it was discovered? It's not anywhere. It's not in New York. Okay? It's in Jerusalem. It only makes sense to do what the Sharagan says. The place, the holy place where the cross was discovered. And we repeat that verse 3 times in Jerusalem, at least. That's what we used to do when I was there. And each time, the two Purvaragirs go down, incense the spot, come back all around the chapel, and finish. Okay. But here, you could do exact same thing. I used to do it. I had a table with a cross on it, and I sensed it. Singing that particular song, not 3 times, once, incensing. And the few people who were in church for Jamer Kutyun knew exactly what was happening because it was obvious. It is obvious. Different than the Sunday before or the Sunday after. Why? Because that's a feast day. The same thing for other feasts of the cross you can do. Yes?
This reminds me of something you said when we had our class last year about how liturgy is like a dramatized way of displaying to people that are illiterate biblical truths or gospel truths. So in this sense, it's like you're showing the church calendar instead of only singing about it.
It is. We have to think of our liturgies, Eastern liturgies, ours included. In some ways, it is visual prayer. Liturgy is visual and verbal prayer. Iconography is prayer with the eyes when the iconographer paints. Music is prayer with voice, singing. So you have to always look for the expression of prayer in church. Sensing, vestments. That's another thing, vestments. We have completely lost the significance of liturgical colors. Completely. Now, on the Feast of the Cross, last Sunday, you go to any church, one priest wears red, the other priest wears white, the other wears purple. What is the liturgical color for the cross?
Green.
Green.
Pat, were these local traditions?
No, this is universal.
The colors?
Oh yes.
Oh wow.
Yeah, universal. Now, even in Jerusalem, where we used to very carefully observe all this, I guess some of the vestments got old, and instead of replacing them, now they're saying just wear whatever is available. We have to be careful, at least in particular, not to wear okay, if you don't have a set of green vestments or green covers, okay, what is the closest you could wear? White, maybe red, sacrifice on the cross. You could make that connection. But the appropriate color is green. Many churches have it. Now, I must say, there is a reason also. Not every church can afford all these liturgical colors. I mean, the ideal would be to have a set of appropriate color altar covers, appropriate color vestments for the priest as well as for the deacons. Not only you need to spend the money to have them made, but you also need the space to keep them for the whole liturgy. It becomes a little bit, expensive to do that. Not everybody can afford it, but at least for the priest, altar cover and the priest's vestments should reflect that. It is indeed appropriate to observe these things because they give the indication for someone when they walk into the church and they see the visual differences, then they will, if they don't know what feast it is, and many people don't, unless, Easter and Christmas, they know. But other than that, when they walk into a church, they don't know. We have to impress upon them as they walk in, something is different today. And they see that cross on the altar. So, in the example of the third verse I gave you, it's adoration of the cross. It's glorification of the cross. It is abiding by the word of the cross, by the word of the song, of the hymn we're singing. But where is our problem? Why can't we do that? The priest knows we have lost in our life circumstances, without going now into all the details, the social circumstances, the lifestyle changes, and so on. At that moment when if we're doing it, not everybody has enough people in some parishes to even do any Jamer Kuchin. But suppose there is. People who are not going to come to Jamer Kuchin. We don't have anybody. There is no pressure. There is no demand for Jamer Kuchin to be done. Unless the priest himself says, I have to do this. I am the priest who will pray for those present and for those who are not present. The prayer is not only for those who are in church, but the prayer is also for those who are not in church. It's for the community who is anywhere in the world. So there is that connection for all the churches. Important to know, if all the churches do the same, we at least are practicing our liturgy in a way that at least will complies with the unity of the church in liturgy everywhere. Echmeazin, Jerusalem, Antilias, here, East Coast, West Coast, it's all the same thing. All Armenian churches on the Feasts of the Cross have something in common. That is a cross visible for the people to create consciousness, to create awareness, to sort of wake them up to the day being different than yesterday, different than tomorrow. So that's an important aspect for all of them. Now, here is one difference. There is the cross, for example. There is the feast of the apparition of the cross, 5th Sunday after Easter. Right? Now, you know what they did in Jerusalem? Now, this miracle happened in Jerusalem. St. Cyril of Jerusalem. Above the main altar at St. James Cathedral, they had a cross specially made. Was probably about yay high, with the wings of the cross having little hooks like this, and on it there were vigil candles. You place vigil candles. Over there, it's not just candles, it's oil. And we used to hang it all the way up above the altar because the cross appeared over the sky.
Wow.
And when somebody walked into the church with all those icons and candles and lanterns hanging, you could still see that cross standing there. I mean, it creates a chill in one's mind, in one's soul, when you enter the church and you see something like that. That visual impression is extremely important. And the same thing, I must say, for example, in all our practices, there are other situations as well, but let me bring a few to your attention. One is this one we're talking about. The other one is the light of the resurrection. We referred to it yesterday. The light of the resurrection, Holy Saturday, okay? Jerakaluyts. Now, Jerakaluyts is for Christmas and Easter, and in both days, the purpose is the same thing. The light of the newborn Christ, the light of the risen Christ. The idea is the same. But there is this ceremony of lighting a candle, the light of the resurrection. The donatrice was very clear on that. You got to have a big stand, a big candle, light the candle while you are reading Isaiah, okay? Arise, shine, and you're singing the Sharagan, Lusavoria Jerusalem. Jerusalem is not just the name of a city. Jerusalem is also the city of the people of God. So it's our spiritual capital. Light the candle of the resurrection. And that stays lit for 50 days on the altar, visible to everybody. We have lost that tradition. Why can't we revive it? We're not even aware of it. That's the problem. What I'm telling you right now, if I told a group of priests, many of them, not all, but many of them will probably hear it the first time because we don't make an effort to teach these things in our seminaries. And that's important, though. It's got to be. We're starting just to do here. This morning, as I observed, I made my observation about the rubrics and being done, goes, comes back, the other one comes, the other one goes, the two sides, achagom, tzachagom. Now, you cannot probably do that appropriately here because too small. Two on this side, two on that side doesn't make much sense. However, there are appropriate ways of doing the liturgy in a way that will not only be impressive for the congregation, but it will also be expressive of the centuries of tradition with which it comes. So the new books, at least when I have an opportunity to do these liturgies, I make sure that I put down all the rubrics in as much detail as possible. Mm-hmm. That's very, very, again. Now, other details. What parts to chant, what parts to sing, and what parts to recite. We have to know the difference. As I said, the deacon almost always, and I'm saying almost just in case I have missed one or two that are just recited, but the deacon is almost always chants. Okay? Also, the Samoserkutyun, very important. The two sides, Pochasatyun, Poch, Ipoch. In the rubrics, many, many times it says, Ipoch, that is 1 and 1, 1 and 1. Okay? Very important. Pochasatyun, Samoserkutyun, Pochasatyun. Okay?
Oh, by the way, Darhar,
Yes.
I found your book in the library. It was there the whole time.
Oh, was it? Now, when it comes to our Sharagan singing, in my days, and my generation probably was the last generation where we sang almost entirely without music, by ear. There's nothing wrong in reading it from an existing music. Not everybody, will have that opportunity. Some of that has gone. But what we are losing, and we have to be careful about this, is the different opportunities, different occasions where the tempo of the music changes to fit the circumstances as well as the tempo of the liturgy. That is, our sharagans can be sung in 3 tempos: hortor, chapavor, yev zamer. Okay? Now, steri is different. Steri is very slow.
It's all about Queen.
Zanrakun.
Yeah, Tanra Queen is right. And that is a completely different style, a completely different musical tone, and it may or may not really, even at this point in our present circumstances in the West, in general Western world, it probably is even sometimes intolerable for many people. Got to accept it. However, I'll give you an example. Ուրախներ Սուրբ Եկեղեցի. Okay? Generally we sing in Chapavor. Ուրախներ Սուրբ Եկեղեցի. Kimsa. Okay. Now that's Chapavor, that's the middle one. Zaner. That's Zaner. And then there is Hortor. Urachler Surp Yegeretsi Kanzi Christos Arkain Yergnitz. You see now the difference? Each Sharagan has these three tempos.
What were the three temples again? Chapavor, Zaner, and Hortor.
Hortor, Chapavor, Zaner. Okay? And each one is sung differently for different occasions. Rashapar, right? Rashapar. Rashapar Astavadzie. Same. Now that's Tatsa. That the one that we are familiar with is the Chapavor, the one that I just sang. But then the same thing comes in Hortor. Rashapar Astavadzie Mishparech Namo Vorharach Kidutyam Perspergutyum Hayastan. That's Hortor. And then there is Zaner. Rashapar Astavadzie. You see how, and for the occasion, you could choose which one you're going to sing. Sometimes would be appropriate one and not the other, and so on, depending on the occasion. These nuances, I am afraid we're losing. And with it, we're losing a part of our liturgical music tradition that is very rich, and it made a difference for past generations. It is not making any difference now. So we have to, I would like to see it revived with more awareness, reinvented to our present circumstances with more awareness. Okay?
Have you ever heard of a Tiv Badarak?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
We called it Tiv Badarak for Lent.
Yeah.
But Tiv Badarak is not really in our tradition.
Yeah.
Tiv Badarak is in Catholic tradition. We used the term for Lent because some segments during Lent in our Badarak are either done silently without singing, like the preparation and everything, And in the absence of another term, we started applying that term. But in reality, it doesn't exist. What really exists in us is during Lent, we do the Badarak with a little more tone of awareness of repentance of the moment, of the occasion. For example, singing Hayriyev Narosh, okay? Amen, Hayriyev Narosh. In Jerusalem, now, we are familiar with Yegmalian music, Gomidas music, two different versions, but we have completely now forgotten the traditional tone. Gomidasyan Yevon Tokvitkum, Gomidasyan Yevon Tokvitkum, Yegmalian Yevon Tokvitkum, traditional Yevon Tokvitkum.
I've heard that song there though.
You have? No, Roscommon is different.
I think they do Avant Tagan for
Okay.
the Amen Yevon Tokvitkum solo.
There is Amen Yevon Tokvitkum, yes. Amen Yevon Tokvitkum. Amen Yevska Utyan Zera Chesu. I wish we would revive that here, but you know why we have difficulty? Because we have some deacons who consider that their privilege every Sunday to get everybody's attention with their aria concert during Badarak for everybody to listen. That's what it really becomes.
I've never seen that before. That's weird.
What?
I'm just kidding. It's because I can't sing it. I'm just jealous.
Okay, but Amen Yevon Tokvitkum is another pitfall. So let's not get there.
That melody is called Avant Tagan in Jerusalem.
Yeah,
I heard that one when I was there.
yeah. In Jerusalem they sing it, not here.
Yeah.
Not here. Even though it's available, it can be, but nobody wants to learn it because it doesn't give the kind of spotlight that the other one does. That's part of the problem. But I'm going to give you an example of soup. Ekmalian is soup. Gomidas is okay. Yet the traditional is it's a little faster moving.
Who's written that melody? Do we know? Or is it
It's
just
traditional. It's traditional. Levon Chilingirian, the late choir director of Jerusalem, put it in European notation.
Mm-hmm.
I have a copy of it.
Oh.
Yeah. Wait. Go ahead.
So if we see Chilingirian, Amen Yevhokvoitkum, that's the Avandakan Jerusalem one written down?
That's one, yes.
Oh.
That's one.
Around when was he teaching in Jerusalem?
He he died in the 30s.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
He died in the 30s. But when I got to Jerusalem in 1956, his reputation, there were still Vartabets who remember him from their student days. So, and he had written everything. He had converted from Armenian music to European music, and he had them in books. That has been now converted into European music in the books and everything else. So they're available.
Yeah, we have the 3 volumes. We use it. So those
I
books
know, I
are,
have that too.
yeah, well, you have a better copy. We don't. Ours is hard to read. But so that's like 100 years old. That
Almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost. But Chilingirian was a very, very knowledgeable. And there were quite a few also. Here in America, we had Hagop Kalfayan, Chris Kalfayan's dad was another expert.
really.
Yes, he wrote Armenian, he read Armenian notation as well. I don't know if he read European notation, but he definitely read Armenian notation.
Wow.
And all our Sharagam, the entire book is available in Armenian notation. So if somebody, and it's not a secret, it's just a matter of learning how to read Armenian notation. Can be done. So what I want to do is now go to Jamakirk. Now please open.
What are we looking to?
For the clergy, for the priests, participating priests, there is Jamoshno. Jamoshno. Now, I am saying this only because there was a time when every church almost, even the small village churches, had more than one priest. So Jamoshno is one function, and we will look at that more closely. Avakeretz is another. Ashager Geretz is another. Badakich is another. Each one has a role to play. The deacon is the same thing. There is the Avak Sargavak. Hedevak Sargavak Anangseng. The rotation is 4. The Avak Sargavak does it today, tomorrow is out of the rotation. Hedevak moves up. Mutk Sargavak moves here, Yelk Sargavak comes in, and then the other one in rotation, whoever is next, comes in. During Jamer Kutyun, this one has certain karozes to read, this one has designated karozes to read, this one has a function, this one has a function. In Badarak, Avak Sargavak is also called Nacha Sargavak. He is the one who reads the gospel and does the Verapim. Hedevak Sargavak is the one who does Purvar. Mutk and Yelk do Kishos. On regular badaraks, if you have 10 deacons, only 4 go on the altar. The rest of them sing with the choir. Why not? Why crowd the altar unnecessarily, which is what we do sometimes? We have 10 deacons on the altar.
We need a momokos too,
Those are tibis. They're not deacons.
but they have to be on altar, right?
Yeah. But tibirner urishen, they're different. We're talking about only this.
So
You have, momagal, tibir. Momagal, candle holder. Another thing that those of you who have been to Jerusalem remember, during Badarak in Jerusalem, they have a bell. At certain spots during Badarak, they ring the bell. It is a way of alerting people to something sacred happening, sur, or because the prayer during sur is actually, the priest reads a prayer that recalls from the creation to the cross how God saved the world with his plan. And it's an important one. And there are a couple of other moments when that bell is rung. Long Island has it, but they do it not where they're supposed to. At good times, not that, in good spots, at the good moments, but not exactly where the Jerusalem tradition has it. But we have to be aware. Now, the Jamoshno is the one who says the Machtangs. Now, you look at the Jamakirk, okay, Kisherain Jamak, Garkavurtum, Asaragas, Aotis, Hayastania, Sigresvo, Borgadari image Kisheri, in the middle of the night. It doesn't say priest, but it is understood, or it is assumed that the reader would know. Now I wouldn't assume that. If I had to redo this, I would say kahana, priest, does that. Or if you want, you could say priest, kahana, yev zhogoburt. It would be appropriate for the priest to start and the people to sing, to recite the Haymer together. And then, der yetesh shirtun simpanas. It's the Jamoshno who says that. Now, we all know, we did it this morning, when I said, der yetesh shirtun simpanas plenan mi orchestras votum tunusko, you said, where is it?
It's not there.
It's not there. That is not there, not because it's the wrong thing to say. It's your or the congregation's response to what Jesus is saying, to what the prayer is saying. Lord, if you open my mouth, if you open my lips, my mouth shall show forth your praises. Or, yeah. It's more or less like saying amen. Okay? But that's natural response. It's not in the text. And it's not a formal part of the Badarak. It's a spontaneous part of the Badarak. Okay? Or the beginning. Okay? Then, of course, there's the Pazum. Then, Kishesugi Kisheri. Now, here is where traditionally the parts from one to the other changed. Itzain avuren, okay? what the tone of the day is, starts Ishesuk. Tomorrow, the other side starts. So every day, it switches. Okay? So Hishesuk is indeed the Avakeritsutas. Tomorrow, it's going to be Ashagirditas. All right? Edo. Now, Ampajaneli, it has become a more formal. In Jerusalem, they did it, the deacons did it only on St. Stephen's Day. It was their feast day. But I'm glad to say that I think in Aivazian they have revived that, and they're doing this more frequently. And that's important to revive because it is a beautiful attachment to Hishesuk. Okay. By the way, Hishesuk actually is inspired by Psalms. This is not entirely Saint Narcissus' creation, but it is inspired by the Psalms, and it's a beautiful, beautiful song. And then you see, go to Karos. It says Karos, doesn't say anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But in practice, on Saints' Day and on Dominical days, it's Zartusyak Samenekyani Hankastene. On fasting days, Zartusyak Samenekyani Hankastene Kano. It's a little faster. Okay, you have two. Now, on page 31, you see there it says, Yevasi Devornia Ist Batshaji Avuren, according to the proper of the day. Igurages Yevidonis Derunaganes, on Sundays and Dominical days, Yerek Dervornia. Idonis Serpots, Hisun Dervornia. Yev Havurus Bahos, Hariur Dervornia.
So I think after this, you have to say like 100 times Dervornia, or like just Dervornia, or like chanting.
No, it's just Dervornia. I didn't have it with me.
Would you do that in Jerusalem?
But there is, we didn't. Nobody does that now. Even though in Jerusalem there was a lot of time to do that, but nobody did it. I don't remember anybody did it. But here's the thing. Is that essential? It's really not. It is a natural way of seeking God's presence, seeking God's mercy, but it's not an essential part. Whether you say it 3 times or 100 times, you're saying the same thing. It's the level of awareness that probably is more important than the number of times you say it. In some instances, they had the Avotashar, and the one that I have has 105 balls.
Extra.
You know exactly what you see by the time you get there. But it would take you about 10, 15 minutes to really go through 100 dervornes. That's not essential. What I'm trying to right now is to raise your awareness of what you have in your hand that probably misses your eye because we don't do it and you just skip over it. But there is a lot of good information hidden there. Աշխարհը մենայն Դիարն ներսիսի հայոց կաթողիկոսին Ողբերգություն անցին զղջալով. It's a lament of a person in repentance. Եվ փողոք յուրաքանչյուրը մի խոստովանապար. And a protest against yourself. You're protesting your own sinfulness. Okay? Now, here is another thing. Musical expression on regular days. Աշխարհամենայն արիսնայեցյալ ախտագից լերու պանամը շրտունց պարպարիմ լեզվազ փոքիմ զանցնես. On these days, however, for example, in Jerusalem, on the major feasts, Hagopos Diarnech Pair Stepanos, Bogos Bedros, Yevortvos Vorodman. Ashkaramenain Arisnayetsial Achtagitz Leruk Panamaz Shirtuns Parparim Lezvavs Pokem Zansnes Dervornia, and so on and so forth. But various musical tones for various occasions is another wealth, richness of our liturgical heritage that even if we don't practice, I don't want to lose it. I think it should be kept somewhere. Now, this particular music that I sang, it goes all the way to the end. And when it comes to Sirov Kasrutian, Sirov Kasrutian, very elaborate. But that is where the prayer life of our ancestors comes to life, because they didn't create this to give us music. They gave us a rich prayer expressed in music. And that is what I would like to salvage, to keep. Okay?
Did I answer your question?
I think we have a question.
I'm not checking the chat. Arman, I'm sorry if you've been writing in the chat.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Is it okay if I ask now?
Arman
Hi, Arman, Harsir.
That hide.
Parça Khosir, chem lăser.
Okay. Oh, that's why.
Okay, Arman.
Hypothetically speaking, rather than using the money funds and building physical churches, I don't know if
Arman, cum odet parça shiny volume.
yeah, it's up.
No, this is the highest it goes.
Can you hear me?
Okay, Hartsur Arman.
Okay, is it? So my question was, hypothetically, if we are using funds to build physical buildings, physical churches, many more, rather than using that money to invest in physical buildings that can be destructed and destroyed, God knows, by the enemy, God forbid, have ever been attempts done to record everything? And like all these musics that you are singing, I would like to have them recorded somewhere on the paper. It's easy to save the paper. And as Dr. Irvin mentioned yesterday, all the recording goes into the cloud. We can find recordings from the cloud and teach our children and priests and deacons, rather than spending money into physical property that can be distracted, like what happened in Artsakh. Was there any way to preserve all these recordings written down as a scores or notes?
We need to somehow save the music because it could be destroyed and lost.
These are Arman, these are already recorded. The music is available. It is recorded. It's in Chilingirian's books. It is there.
Like that recorded.
Yeah, he has recorded this. It's just out of usage for a few reasons. Number one, we do not have the liturgical setting and the liturgical motivation, if you will, in this country to do it almost anywhere. That's why it's the first time you heard this. But in Jerusalem, we used to do it, and I hope they're still doing this on those particular days. It's actually 4 times a year. 4 times a year. The other thing is, however, and this is where we can change our ways. There are other parts where the music variations for various liturgical seasons come into play. For example, the Alleluia on Sundays. Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia. Now, that is a hortor tone for Resurrection Sundays. And then, however, there is a more solemn tone for Harutian, which we used to sing for Hinans, which is the season specifically for the resurrection. Alleluia, 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 Astված երցրվեցան։ See, քեղեցիկ եղանակներ են, or խաչի եղանակներ, խաչի, see? Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia. גם זנציאן. Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia. Քեղեցիկ, շատ քեղեցիկ, դարբեր. So the faithful now the faithful don't know the difference. The faithful are not even there due to circumstances in our lifestyle now. But in the old days, people looked for it. And if the priest didn't know or skipped something, there was somebody in there. Where are you going with this? Why did you skip? They would know. But now, whether you do it or you don't know, but something very important when it comes to liturgies, remember this. Remember this. A lot depends on the priest's conscientiousness about maintaining these traditions. If you do it, you do it. If you don't, nobody will know, but we lose. Okay? Very important to remember. And of course, the other music that we still keep, at least to some extent, is the Holy Week, Vo'okomian. That is a lamenting tone. Alleluia, 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 during Holy Week. Okay. Now, Ganon HaKluch is there, each one. Now, over there, now here is one example that I spoke about yesterday. It says, Ganon HaKluch, Garkav as Utzainitz, Aipza. But that is only a designation tone. It is not a musical tone. So if the tone of the day is Aipza, that's the Ganon HaKluch. It has nothing to do with Aipza as a musical key. Okay? Now, today was Kimgen. You sang? But then, when it came to the Poch, Mercesin Hamtervatski Marachi Koloder, Espani Komi Mastun Arazis, Alleluia, Alleluia. Okay? That goes a little faster. Okay? And it switches the two sides. Mimor Nagadiga. We don't have the facility here, or you don't have enough to really go back. But if, let's say, we had same number of seminarians, we had 8 seminarians, 4 on this side, 4 on this side, that's what it should be.
There in Jerusalem, I think in your time, would the priest do the Ganon HaKluch first as the Garki?
Yes. Yes.
And then after the Poch?
Yes.
Poch ni Poch.
Yeah. In fact, Husharar Sargavakegar. He used to come up. The priests are standing in the tusk like this.
Yeah, he walks
and
up.
He would go to the head of the line, and he would say, and he would start. And then as soon as he comes to the end, he reminds him of the next set of words. So he won't go. And the priest, however, I never understood this, even when I was a child. Why doesn't he hold the book in his own hand and sing it without somebody reminding him? Yeah. On both sides, one of us would come, face the priest, the one at the head, and we would say, Arari Iravun Sivartarutun. Okay, I got it. And then when the moment came, Arari Iravun Sivartarutun. And you'd go, Doesn't make sense to me then, doesn't make sense now.
I think it's because the priests were supposed to know it by heart, maybe.
No. If he knows by heart, why remind him?
And then they needed someone to remind them because maybe they got lazy to learn them by heart.
Yeah. It probably came from the time when there wasn't enough copies of the books. Maybe. Okay, now, Ganon HaKluch, you have all the Ganon HaKluch, and of course you have Aisoranjar, that is specifically for Holy Friday, okay? Specifically for Holy Friday. However, in our present donut suites, it also suggests this, not suggests, actually directs this as the in place of Hankistian Sharagan on a few feast days, including Chachverats and a few other feast days, including Vartavar and so on. And of course, Hankistian Psalmos, the Psalms for the repose. Now, that repose, let me say this. That repose, that's Hankistian Sharagan, the set of Hankistian Sharagans, which we skipped today, is not supposed to be done on days when you don't do Badarak. Because Hankistian Sharagan or Hankistian Gark is directly connected to Badarak. Mm-hmm. During Badarak, there is a section when the dead are mentioned by name or in general, the deceased. So if you don't have Badarak, you used to skip that. Hankistian Sharagan in our present practices should be skipped on fasting days, because on fasting days we're not supposed to celebrate Badarak. We're supposed to do Jashu Badarak that we spoke about yesterday. That is to do the Jashu Jam, skip the Badarak part, and go to Hairmer. That is the distribution of the sacrament from reserved sacraments.
So why doesn't it say that here? It should say that.
If you look in Diran Serpazan's book, you will see that. He has that over there very clearly. You know, it really is not difficult to understand the logic behind it. And this is one of the points that I point to when it comes to the discussion on communion during Lent. So you have the 4 segments of Badarak. That's the preparation. And that's synaxis, and you have Eucharist, and you have communion, and dismissal. Okay. This is where the elements are consecrated with the invocation of the Holy Spirit. Okay? So if you do this, which is preparing the elements, if you're not going to do this, this is skipped anyway. Because you're not going to have bread and wine prepared for this. So you just have synaxis, Jashu, and then you jump to communion from Hairmer. So you are not celebrating Badarak. All this, however, is very much studied in detail in the volume, you have it here in this library, I saw it. Hagopos Dashian, Hosep Katerjian, the two Vienna Mochitarist fathers who put a history of the Armenian Badara Kamaduits, the text, from the earliest texts all the way to now, the current text. So it's in very, very detailed study. It's a lifetime of work, but it has all the details. It's the most authoritative source of Armenian Badarak text and liturgy. Okay, so you have all of it there, and it is there also that you will see the text of pre-sanctified gifts translated into Armenian. Nachasar Pelots Badarak. It's in that volume. Shall we take a 10-minute break and then come back? Okay. In this volume, he has collected some individual items that he had written. And here on this page, there is a little obituary, if you will, of a priest, Besak Kahana Etarian, with the picture. It brought memories because he was a young priest when I was a little boy in Beirut. And he used to come to our Sunday school. A man which, not much education. He didn't have PhDs or university, but he had great faith. And look, years have passed by now, almost 70 years. But that man did something that has stuck with me, and I have used it exactly in that same context with some other Sunday school kids. Now, in Beirut, we used to do Sunday school, not Sunday morning. Sunday morning, we all went to church. Then we came home. We had lunch. We had a nap. At 3 o'clock, we went back for Sunday school for 2 hours, not a half hour, not 45 minutes. Went back for 2 hours, 3 to 5, or sometimes 2 to 4, 2 to 5, whatever. And this man, Der Besak, used to come and talk to us, kids. And he said something, I remember it was probably one of the Feasts of the Cross, possibly Chach Veratz. And he explained how we make the sign of the cross. 3 fingers together, and they represent Trinity. But for 7-year-old kids, Trinity just, what? No, it's theology, it's true, but it's something that our minds are not open to yet. But he said something else. He said, okay, every time you make the sign of the cross, how do you make the sign of the cross? Amen. Okay. He said, remember this. It's a prayer. Ahotmane. Ovas vazvor yerginkneir. Yergirichar. Shirtsetsaram mengo. Yegur sirdis mechpanage. It is simple. He probably said it once, but it stuck until today. And I've used this with Sunday school kids, giving them exactly the story that I told you, that I learned this from a priest who taught me that. And you know how many kids until today, they see me and they say that's what they remember? It's the only thing they remember. You know why? Because it has simplified a very common and important element of our worship tradition, making the sign of the cross, in terms that they can relate to. Having said that, just recently, my grandchildren were in church, and the priest went to visit them. One of the kids asked, it's a nice thing that our priests now take off and visit the Sunday schools. It's good for the kids to see them. But one of the kids asked, Terhai, we make the sign of the cross, we hold 3 fingers together. What does that mean? The little kid is asking the priest. The priest said, that's an interesting question. I have to look it up and I'll let you know. Huh?
My mom taught me that when I was 4.
This is so.
I think that Sunday school kid probably knew more about that than he did, but I was surprised. I was shocked that a priest didn't know the answer to this question. It's a very simple thing.
It is.
But you know what? Look at now in relation to the story that I said about Derbasa Getarian from my childhood to this. I remember this. What is this child going to remember? Think about that. Now, looking back in the Jamakirk,
It's a little bit so odd.
the variables in the Jamakirk for Aravodian Jamerkutyon, Kisherain we covered. For Aravodian, the same thing at the beginning. Ofneal dermer Jesus Christos amen haidmer, not the whole text, just enough. But it doesn't specify the priest, the deacon, or pochasatz. It doesn't. It assumes. This is throughout. I don't need to repeat it. Psalmos, the same thing. Now here's something that we might consider. The psalm itself is quite lengthy, quite long. So what in Jerusalem we did, and even here we do, we read a couple of verses and then go to the singing, but we stop. In Jerusalem, there were 2 tabis, came to the center, said the first few verses out loud, and the singing started, but they remained and in a low voice continued to read the Psalms while the others were singing. Okay? Nobody heard it, but the reading of the Psalms as prayer while the singing is going on as prayer, 2 prayers on 2 levels continues. That's a liturgical tradition that actually is quite common in all Eastern liturgies, in all Eastern churches. Okay? And of course, the heart's sharagan. And then there is machtank. Machtank. Then there is this hartsi sharagan sirpo harutian Christosi. Gives a few samples of heart's sharagans. Harutian Christosi, Freshtaga Bedat, Markareitz, Abashharutian, Amoren Arakelos, Amoren Nancheselos, Amoren Mardirosats. That's it. So actually what that says, and this is the point that I tried to make yesterday, here, imagine, should be this entire Sharagnos. So if you put this into that, you're going to have a huge volume. That's why they separated, put a few samples, and published this separately. So when that moment comes, you put that book aside, you go here, you finish the Sharagan, you go back. Okay? So, and then Machtank, Gyurageitz, Yevailot Postonitz. Now, can you, in context of what we have explained, I have explained here, the Jamoshno and all. Who would say the Machtank? Zor Hachtos Kanchira Korsuki Mezi Harutianan Gam Derutianan Gam, whatever feast day is. Jamoshno. Exactly. Jamoshno would say that. And then, now you have the choice. Machtank Mardirosatz. When it's a saint's day, that's the Machtank. Because there, and then comes Machtank Bahotz on fasting days. Then Yek Mariamu, Mezatsusce, the Magnificat. And then once again, look, there is samples of Mezatsusce hymns, Magnificat hymns. Okay? Likewise, now we have, I believe, 38 or 36 Mezatsusce Sharagans. You put that in there, that's going to get a little thicker and thicker and thicker. So they are all in there. Now there is something else. It says, Karoz Gyurageitz, for Sundays. That's for Sundays. Okay? On Sundays only.
To me, it makes sense that Surb Zasfadin is said every day, including Sunday. Doesn't that make sense?
No.
No? Just skip it and you go to...
Yeah, because that's, after Mezatsusce, but if it's during the week, it's Surb Zasfadin. But on Sundays, it's the Karos.
Okay.
Now, here is the thing though. If you're going to skip the Karos, because you're not going to do the Yuga periods,
Oh, yeah.
okay? Then you go, you say Surb Zasfadin. If you're going to, actually, when I was in the parish, I did do the Karos Gyurageitz because that is only for Sundays. It has not direct connection with Yuga periods. Okay, that's for Sunday. A lot of people make that mistake, assuming that that has something to do with Yuga periods. It doesn't. For Sunday, you do that. Then if you want to skip Yuga periods, you skip Yuga periods. That's a separate service. The reason I say that is because Yuga periods, which is the next thing that follows, Yuga periods used to be reserved for cathedral churches. Okay? I'm very, very pleased, very glad that now we do that in our cathedral. We're doing that, Yuga periods, every Sunday. That's very important and very good. But it was not really meant for parish churches. It was for cathedral churches only. Now, in our entire diocese right now, we have only one cathedral. Whereas you imagine in the Ottoman Empire, we had about 45 dioceses. So 41 cathedrals. Some services were reserved for cathedrals only, and this is one of them. Okay, in the cathedrals. So you did that. Now, if you skip it, and then there is, of course, the Avedaran, the Harutian Avedaran, Tarman, you have Harutian Avedaran. The only difference is that when you come to Lent, they read only the portion of the crucifixion and burial and left out the resurrection, because the resurrection is going to come at the end, at Easter, with the resurrection of Christ. So during Lent, only Hachelutun Yevtavu. Here is another one. Yerk Azgani Yuaperitz Avedaranin. There is again a few tempos for regular Sundays. Harutian Koder Vochtatarets Ais Christos Orshmeluske Zamenaina Vursken Tamutian Imo. Or for feast days, Harutian Koder Vochtatarets Ais Christos. You see, for the occasion, the solemnity of the day also is expressed in the musical tradition. For Yer Avohatzitz Gyurageitz, during Lenten Sundays, Zamenai Naburus Genats Imots. And then, of course, Tasku Sereng. For Easter and regular Sundays, Lusabaizah Reshtagan Nestelo, and there are a couple of variations there, followed by Zavarjatsialkus Mezaborachutiam, which is once again, the first paragraph is skipped during Lent. Yes, and only Contresu Kavadali Purchemernes Christos is Mezarjani Araste Arutian Euro coming. Okay, Amen Agetsuits. And then come Vohormia, once again, consider the absence of rubrics and the assumption that the user is going to know, will have the experience to know. Nowadays, it has to be more clear. And then Vohormia Sharagan. The comment remains the same. Only a few samples, the rest of it is in the Sharag notes. Yerger Bakemk, and then you have the three variations. Saints' Day, Fasting Days, and Dominical Days. And then Der Hernitz Sharagans, same way, and then Parki Partsunas. Now, Parki Partsunas, this is our version. With little variations, it also exists in other churches as well. But basically, it's the same text, some variations, the same as the creed. It is the same creed, the same source, but a little variations, copiers or later historical developments have changed it a little bit. And then comes, after that, Aravodu Yerk. Now, there is another aspect of our liturgical celebrations that some maybe we will be unable to practice under our circumstances, but inside the tas, the chancel, you have the two sides, Sahagomian, you have Achagomian, and then you have the Adyan. Okay, you have the Adyan. On some feast days, and some like Parki Partsuns, on regular weekdays, you would sing it from inside the tas, but on Sundays, days and on feast days, you would come out into the nave, into the Adyan, and sing it there. Now, those of you who have been to Jerusalem, you can imagine that over there it's not only easy and simple to do, because all the students come out, the tabirs come out, and the deacons, and then the priests, and they also form a U-shaped presence in the Adyan, and in the center is the presiding clergy, usually bishop, and they go into Parki Partsunas. In our case, we don't, but in my case, I did come out. Even if I had, one or two individuals, I did come out and sang it from the Adyan, just to give that change of visual motion. Followed by the morning song, Arabodian Yerk, for various occasions, and then Asastsuk. Now for Asastsuk, the verses are there, and they're very, very good, quite thorough for its day. However, we have to also now consider that a new revision and new edition of Jamakir has to include certain additions and corrections that reflect our present circumstances. For example, Vasım parebaş takավորած եւ աստվածածիր իշխանած զորավարած եւ զորացնոցին. Okay, but in those days, that was the form of government. Now we have a different form of government. The obligation that we have is to pray for our governments, and from the perspective of Christian tradition, including the words of St. Paul, even the government is not Christian, we need to pray for the government. There are temporal leaders. Now, even if they are Muslim or other faiths and other religions, now, we are all over the world. We're in countries where either Christianity or sometimes even monotheism is not the religion of the land. We have to pray that they will lead us with justice and truth, whether they're Christian or not. We need to really, praying for government is our obligation, not praying for one particular form of government. And this one does it. So, and that's where I find a little bit of drawback in reproducing the Jamakir exactly as is with the camera, not having introduced the change. The other one, for example, even though we don't have as many captives as we used to, but we still have some. I wouldn't consider taking that out. But here's the next one. Vasim Janabar Hortats, those who travel by land, Yevna Hortats by sea, on ship. Well, there was no airplane at the time. They didn't put that there. But now that we have it, shouldn't we add that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, many priests already add that, even though even the recent texts don't have it, because they took a camera picture of this instead of adding that word, which should be. Here is another observation. Vasem hivantats yevanenayim vishtatselos kutabes arokchutian. Something very, very important that I have seen. We pray for our sick. In almost every church where they have bulletins, they make the bulletin and then they have a list of people to pray for their healing. Sometimes a pretty long list. However, in the liturgy, whether it's during Badarak, where there is a similar prayer there, instead of the augmented litany, Գծորդված Քարոզ կամ Քարոզ հավատացելոց վասն խաղաղության ամենայն աշխարհի, there should be a verse there added every time mentioning those for whom we're praying. One verse for those who are sick and living, and one for those who have passed away, special for those whom we are going to put Yankees.
If I may ask a quick question.
Yes.
In terms of Navortads, Otanavortads, are we going to say Tiezera Navortads also? Isn't the Nav already conclusive of all types of Navs? One is the Zova Nav, Ota Nav, you have Tiezera Nav. Isn't the Nav enough for everything?
Just one word?
Yes, just Nav.
What word are you suggesting?
Nav.
Nav, because now we have to say Տիեզերա գնացները կնեղանան մեզանից, կասել մեզ համար չեն աղոթում։ Մենակ օթանավի ժողովրդի համար են աղոթում։
For astronauts.
Excuse me, I didn't get that. Say that again.
I'm asking if we adding people who travel by plane, shouldn't we add astronauts that go to space?
And doesn't the word nav by itself imply the other types of nav? Like saying navortats, we would understand, otanavortats, we would understand.
Right, or travel by land, by sea, or in the air.
Yep.
That could be space, that could be above you. The idea there is, the astronauts are not travelers. They are explorers, at least in our present circumstances. In the future, they may be. Okay, suppose they finally succeeded in 100, 200 years to create a colony on the moon. And then every day there is a flight going. That becomes a different story. But for now, by land, by sea, and by air, would include almost everybody that we have. Now,
thank you.
The thing is that okay, why not right there mention by name those for whom prayers have been requested? Not giving last name, because this is something else that we have to consider in all our liturgical celebrations. We give the last name as if God would not recognize the person if we didn't give the last name. Like if we say Hagop, Krikor, Albert, Edward, God recognizes us by our baptismal name, not by our family name. Important liturgical aspect that we need to keep in mind. The reason, however, we do give the last name is because we're doing it in Armenian and people don't understand and sometimes cannot follow what we're saying, but they know in that prayer you're going to mention name, and the only way they will recognize if you give the last name, because they're now listening very carefully, you're saying, Christos Porti Astozo Anochakal Yeparekut Katakal Rashagan Sirov de Pisankutial Albert Manatsaganian. Okay. I heard my relative's name. Yetemian Albert says he probably will miss it. I understand that situation. However, some of our priests take that into extremes. I've been to funerals when this is what the priest says. Հայսմ անդամ եկեղեցուիս Փասմարչուն սպասավորին ձուխիս Փնի դիքրանագերցի Փնագիչ հայսմ քաղաքի. One day we're doing funeral, and I mentioned this in one of my articles. Tiran Sarpazan is standing next to me, and the parish priest. The parish priest leads the prayer, and he goes, all this. Tiran Sarpazan is chuckling. I can see on his face. After we went in, he told Terha, he says, Terha, you gave all the details to God not to miss the person we were praying for, but you forgot to give the social security number.
That's a good one.
All you have to do is first name or baptismal name, okay? However, last name right now in our present circumstances is understandable and probably necessary. But what I have seen also for the sick, instead of mentioning it in the exact litany, during Badarak, that is the augmented litany, Karos Havadaselos, the litany of the faithful, during Dervaormia, the curtain is closed. The deacon from behind the curtain, this is one that I saw, not everywhere, but the one that I saw, starts as Dervaormia, the choir is singing Dervaormia, without saying any word, gets on the mic and starts, Hagob Vartanyan, Krikor Atamian. What's that all about? Doesn't make sense. It actually dilutes the liturgy. It abuses the liturgy instead of going exactly to where we should pray for those souls. If we do that, we revive the liturgy and its use. We bring the litany, but everybody has to do the same. Something that all bishops, conscious and aware, should instruct all their priests. This is what we do. This is how we do it. Don't do it any other way. Some priests don't even listen to that, but it's up to the bishop to impose it. In my view, those are the kind of things that we have to pay close attention to. Okay?
So if it's a priest or like bishop doing hoke on this for them, you have to say their ordained name, right? Not their birth name.
Baptismal name.
Baptismal name. Not like when you ordain, right? They change your name.
Yeah.
So when you're doing the hokeang, it's for priest or bishop.
No,
You
the
should
name, the priestly
The
name.
priest's name.
Yeah, priestly name. Just skipping the last name is my point. You know, God knows me as Arshen, not as Avak Kahana, Arshen, Hachagir Kahana, Zargya Pilonavur Kahana. No.
How about
Only-
middle name? No middle name is not necessary. But a middle name.
If the person has one, the baptismal name, yes. But the point is the last name, which is the humanly created name. It's not the name under which we were dedicated to God. Baptism is when we were dedicated to God by that name. Okay.
I heard like sometimes, for example, priests would say, Sarkis John Ghazalian II. I heard that too.
Yeah. That's my point, though. God doesn't need to know what's the second or the first. He knows who we're talking about. Who we are praying for. Now, we come at the end of that, we come to the Yev Karoz Horsham Itapor Yelarin, which is the Antastan service. Antastan service is a very, very important aspect. We do Antastan about half the year on average, about 25 times during the year. So it's 52 weeks, it's about half the Sundays in the year. We do it every other Sunday, every Sunday, actually, between Easter, when we do the big Antastan, all the way to Pentecost, one Sunday in the morning, one Sunday at Vespers, okay? Alternately. Here's the important thing. Number one, for our present day, we need to remember that Antastan is a wonderful way to draw our people's attention to, because it relates directly to our responsibility to take care of God's creation, of the earth. It's the ecological prayer of the church from present day perspective, calling on us to take care of the earth in various aspects of it as God's creation, as God's gift to us, as God's assigned responsibility for us to take care of it. And it has a very balanced approach to these blessings. Now, Antastan has always been there, but in its present form, it was developed in Cilician Armenia. What's that? In the Middle Ages. Now stand in Cilician Armenia and try to figure out on the map. Turn east. Here, Օրհնեսիև Բահբանեսիև Նախախնամյալ Բայեսի Արևելյան գողն աշխարհիս եւ հայրաբեդություն հայոց. Cilicia, turn east. It's Echmiadzin. Հայրաբեդություն հայոց. Then you turn west. What's west? Արևմտյան գողն աշխարհիս եւ թագավորություն քրիստոնեից. Turn west from Cilicia, and you have the Byzantine Empire. Թագավորություն հայոց. թագավորություն քրիստոնեից. Then you turn south from Cilicia, and you have Yergiris, Antastanis, Yebadраперություն Dargos. You have all the farmlands south of Cilicia. And then you turn north, and you bless Vanks, Anabadis, Kaaks, all the monasteries, most of the monasteries, not all, but most of the monasteries, monastic centers. Okay, the residential towns, everything was in the north. See, the Antastan blessing is not by chance. It was designed for specific blessings, for specific purposes. And with the inclusion of everything, it also asks for God's blessing. But what is asking for God's blessing? It is also committing ourselves to its care with God's blessings. So ecologically, it is a very timely service for us to do now. But once again, I have to keep repeating this. We have to make our people aware of what this is, so they will wake up and they will say, wow, Our church is really up to date, very much aware of what's going on, very much connected to our life, to our world, and to our responsibilities assigned by God. Very important. Because a lot of times they think we are living in the Middle Ages and forgetting everything that we have. Now, and then you have Ahu Hatzitz. After Mangung, it says, Haurus Ahu Hatzitz Ast Asadera Menagal. That is the prayer of Manasseh that we do. And then the psalm, and then Idoni Sirkos, it gives you the variations there, Idoni Sirkos. But prayer of Manasseh is specifically for Lent. Aruhatz, Lent. When it comes to that, we talked about the liturgical days, fasting days, saints days, and dominical days. Okay, fasting days. What are fasting days? The liturgical content we have already seen. But the level of fasting makes a difference. Aruhatz means the days that you eat nothing, just bread and salt and water. No sustenance. It's not for everybody, and it's not imposable. Our fathers were smart. You have a medical condition, you have to take care of that first. Then, fasting is on 3 levels. One is aruhatz, that's zoma bahuchim. Zom means eating nothing. Then there is bahetzochim, where you eat a vegetarian diet, only vegetables, nothing else. No meat, no animal byproducts, no eggs, no cheese, no milk, no butter. And lastly, there is light, okay? Tetev bahetzochim, where you abstain from meat only. Mm-hmm. You can eat fish. Lenten Saturdays and Sundays, you can eat fish, but no meat. Only meat, like fasting. Yes.
Including like goteren, cheese, butter.
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Irvin's class, we were reading, I think it was Mandakul.
Yeah.
Mandakul.
He's one of your fasting texts. So when you read him and then you read Hosrovig, Takmanich, it becomes clear that there are different ways of doing it. So depending on the situation.
Right.
If you read certain canons that we don't have, but that the Greeks do, they get mad at us for eating cheese and eggs.
We don't.
There was a time that we
Cheese on Lenten Sundays.
yeah. Cheese and eggs. Yeah. Maybe they were lying.
Well, there are some traditions where they don't even eat olive oil. Well, olive is a vegetation. Mm-hmm. And olive oil is the juice of the olive fruit. But some people don't. Look, there is no particular tradition that is right and no particular tradition that is wrong. These are laws that maintain a certain common sense, common practice, that is abstaining from meat or from things that we associate with abundance or with luxury. And to be truthful with you, everybody that I know who really at the beginning of Lent says, I'm going to fast. And what are you going to eat? Oh, I love your lunchy. Well, that's what you should abstain from. See, the idea is to abstain from things that you enjoy. If you do not enjoy meat, that's what you should eat. But the most important thing is the object of fasting is concentrating on immaterial spiritual wealth. Now, don't forget what St. Basil said. What good is it if you don't eat meat, but you chew each other's meat? St. Basil said that. And isn't that what we do?
Yes, indeed.
That's exactly what we do. We continue our fights. We continue criticizing each other. We continue finding wrong with what the other does. We never see anything that we do wrong. So, look, our Father Shmemen woke me up to this. One Sunday, he's giving his homily at the beginning of Lent. He said, you know what, go eat all the meat that you want to eat. Let's shut off the TV. In our present day circumstances, if you're going to fast, shut off that TV.
In this area, shut off Instagram, Facebook, TikTok.
Not just news, he actually said, watch the news if you want, but shut off all these, favorite TV shows. That would be real fasting. Anyway, I think we're at what, 2:00?
Yes.
Yeah, 2:00, we will continue.